What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to try to find me some plywood that's roughly about as thick as the horsehair plaster is up there, which what I would say is somewhere between 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch, and it kind of depends on how it lays. For example, way up in there it's like 3/4 of an inch from where the wood is, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not level and straight in and of itself. The wood could be crooked. But the point of this is, if I'm trying to take a big glob of plaster and stick it up in there, gravity is going to cause it to want to fall out before it gets dry, which means I'm going to wind up wearing most of it, or most of it's going to be on the floor or something like that. So what I did in the living room, and I'm going to do here, is basically find me a piece of plywood about that thick. I'm going to cut it and I'm going to put it into place there. Interestingly enough, for some places where the plaster, like right here, is almost hanging down lower than the laths, which is kind of interesting, but we'll deal with that. But I'm going to go out to the shed and see if I can find me some pieces of plywood. Now keep in mind, I could use a piece of cardboard, but if I used cardboard, although it would technically do the job, I would be stapling it up through there, and then eventually the staples would pull through and the cardboard would fall down. And if I'm gluing that kind of sealing material to it, then that's also going to fall down. So that ain't going to work. So I'll be looking for some pieces of some kind of boardage that I can screw up into those laths. And I'll give you a little history about these laths. If you look at these laths, they're not cut, they're split. What they used to do before the Civil War, they wouldn't cut laths in a sawmill with a saw. They would take a hammer and they would hit them with a hammer and break them, splinter them up, and then put them up in there, and then put the plaster on that. And the plaster would go up between the laths and stick to that. That's why I've said the other day, and I think I might have mentioned that the chimney had burned out in this house, and that's how I know it has. The laths surrounding the chimney are post-war laths, and the laths in the other part of the house are pre-war. Around the time of the Civil War, people started cutting laths with a saw rather than splitting them. That's maybe more history than you needed to know, but there's that. So I'm going to mosey out to our RV shed, which really doesn't have much in it right now. See what I can find to work with, and then we'll get some measurements and go from there. So here's a piece that should work pretty well for that area where I showed you on one side the laths were almost as low as the putty. This is a piece of what do you call this? This is siding that goes on the house. There's a name for it. I can't think what it is right now. Clapboards. But because it's angle cut, I believe I can climb up there with a pencil and hold this up and cut out roughly something close to what I'm going to need to put in that spot up there. Let me get y'all something to stand on. Now I'm going to go out and cut that. I see another piece over here. It may be a little too thick though. I've got some plywood out there I noticed a while ago that's a little thinner. It might be more appropriate for that. I'm also running some of this stuff. This is some of that stuff that you put in the shower when you put tile on top of it, or you put it down on the floor. This is like cement board is what it is. I see some cement board pieces here that could also work well up in that same area. So I'm going to carry them back in with me. We may wind up using them, or cutting and marking and using them, or not, but we'll find out.